In 3 weeks, when the dust finally settles, Donald Trump will be reelected as the President of the United States. And predictably, Democrats' heads will explode. Welcome to Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. And that's what we're talking about today, folks. We are talking about Trump being reelected as our president for another 4 years. You guys remember this photo right here? This gem right here that seems to be, that's turned into a meme a million times? Well, it's going to be like this again in just a few weeks, times a million. And it is all because the expectations that were set by the media is that we already have a president-elect, everybody. Hey, call it right now. Let's have an event on the news and let's have the new president and his vice president give speeches, and we'll give 24-hour coverage on all of our news channels to how and why he won and what worked for him, and they went all in on that. So what's going to happen to all the liberals once it's announced that Donald Trump is president? Of course, they are going to go crazy. They're going to lose their minds. If you're new to the Newswatch, welcome to the show. This is a show, a common sense perspective on our weekly news cycle. This show is for conservatives that care about what's going on behind the sensationalized headlines. And today's show is no different. We're going to be talking about the reasons that point to why Donald Trump will be reelected at the end. Hey, stay hopeful, stay positive. When this thing all comes out in the wash, it's going to be all right, okay? And we're going to be looking at reasons for why Donald Trump is going to win. The mainstream media, as we all know, in cooperation with the big tech companies in San Francisco, have been pushing a very specific narrative, right? What have they been pushing? They've been telling us that the projection's been made by the AP, everybody, and it's inevitable now. Have you guys seen this when you've been watching YouTube videos? You know, this is just, I get a kick out of this kind of thing. U.S. elections, the AP has called the presidential race for Joe Biden. They have to use the word has called because they can't use anything more official than has been called. They have to keep it general like that because all it's really been is a projection, you know? So AP has called it, but really all the AP has is a projection. They do not actually have the right to announce who is actually president of the United States. And as things stand right now, there's a lot of litigation. There's a lot of investigation going on into this election, specifically at the highest office, the presidential election. And when the announcement is made, and all this announcing that's been happening gets reversed, and it's back to Donald Trump being the president, not just president-elect, right? When he is officially reelected, the liberals, well, they're going to go crazy. We'll have, a couple of weeks of looting and rioting and arson and theft and whatever goes along with, liberals and how they react, I think I talked about this last week. The optics are so bad when you've got like people partying in the streets in front of like boarded up businesses, In essence, what they're saying is, if you guys would have voted against us and the other guy would have won, then we'd be burning down all these businesses right now. But because we won, we're going to dance in front of them. We're going to dance in the streets in front of this as our backdrop. Madness. At any rate, it may get so bad because their expectations were set so high for them being the winners of this election. When it gets reversed back to Trump, we may actually see some liberals take it so badly that some of them commit suicide. I would not be surprised if I saw in the news cycle liberals losing their shit so much that they commit suicide. At any rate, I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want to see anyone commit suicide. But I do think they're that crazy. Now, we're going to be looking at two things, two kind of categories of evidence for why I believe Donald Trump's going to win this election in 2020. First, I want to look at some of the recent reports and some of the recent interviews. I'm going to mention 3 here, but there's been lots of interviews like this. I'm going to be looking at interviews of 3 of the lawyers on Trump's team. Or actually, one of the lawyers, I think, is just making a comment. He may not be on Trump's legal team, but he's got some really good things to say about this, and he's a very intelligent guy, so we're going to look at what he's saying. Basically, what we're going to be talking about is the evidence that is being collected and built up right now by Trump's legal team to explicitly identify and display the widespread coordinated fraud that will expose the deep level of corruption in this election by the Democrats. I hate to say it. The deep state liberal establishment, working with many different agencies, has committed massive amounts of fraud. And that's what's going to come out. The first lawyer that I'd like to highlight is Lynn Wood. He had an interview on John Fredericks' show. By the way, I'm going to leave links to each one of these 3 interviews in the description, so you can follow up and watch all those interviews if you haven't already seen them. But if you're watching my show, you've probably already seen a good amount of these interviews. At any rate, Lynn Wood, when he was getting interviewed by John Fredericks, the attorney Lynn Wood said that Trump most likely won 70% of the vote nationally and probably won all 50 states. That's a heavy thing for someone to come out and say, let alone someone of Lynn Wood's stature. Lynn Wood is the attorney, or one of the attorneys on the team that represented Nick Sandmann, the Covington High kid that wore the MAGA hat. And that was not an easy layup case to take to court. This guy knows his stuff, and he is saying, most likely, Donald Trump won 70% of the national vote, and most likely won all 50 states if there wasn't this corruption baked in. Now we're going to move on to one of Trump's lawyers on his legal team, Sidney Powell. She's one of the best lawyers in our country right now. She is on Trump's legal team. She's been getting interviewed in a number of locations, but there was an interview she did with Lou Dobbs, and I left the link in this description. She is saying that there is irrefutable evidence of hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes cast for Joe Biden in multiple states without evidence. And basically what she's doing right now is building the evidence that she will bring to court that will spell the win for Donald Trump. And that's what we're going to see come out in the coming weeks. That was further backed up by Jenna Ellis, counsel to the president. She was giving updates and sort of behind the scenes in the election in an interview with Eric Metaxas on his show. And she provided a deep dive into the overwhelming amount of Democrat corruption in this election. And right now, she is a part of the team that is organizing that evidence that will be delivered to the court soon. What we are going to see here over the next 3 weeks is a series of major bombs being dropped. And it is going to expose, most likely, the greatest fraud, the greatest fraudulent election in American history. Now, I'd like to move on to the second bit of proof that I'd like to point to. This one is more looking at historical evidence, looking at a trail of events that have happened leading up to now that we can basically say, using this as our evidence, just more anecdotally, Donald Trump's going to win. He's going to be reelected. Because honestly, this whole thing that we're seeing right here with this election, the fraudulent attempts by the Democrat establishment, is really just the latest attempt in a dishonest, nefarious way of pushing through their agenda on the rest of the country. And so what are the historical trends? What is the proof that we can see? All right, so I'm just going to look back over the last 4 years, starting when Donald Trump was elected president in 2016. Immediately, they started accusing him of all sorts of things, looking for any minute thing that they could turn into a court case, maybe turn into something that they could get one of the intelligence agencies to expose something about Donald Trump. First, they were looking at his businesses, and they were looking at this, and they were looking at that, right? They ended up settling in on the Russian collusion case. I guess they thought that was their best chance. The Mueller report, the Mueller investigation. Who was it? Rachel Maddow. For like 3 years, her whole entire show was just Russian collusion. That's all it was. And they pushed that Russian collusion through their mainstream media and all the big tech companies, focusing on how Donald Trump had some sort of alliance with Russia. It was all fake. It was all drummed up narrative. And I believe that's what we're seeing here now again. The media, big tech companies, all working together with a liberal establishment to put a lot of pressure on this election that Joe Biden's already won it. But it still feels like the same fake news that they've been pushing on us for the last 4 years. What is really different about the media going all in on one thing and ignoring everything else the same way? What's different about it now than when they did the Russian collusion? No different. Then they moved on to the Stormy Daniels thing, which ended up being just a big nothing burger. Out of the Stormy Daniels, there was several other cases they were trying to make, like, ooh, there's this dark past to Donald Trump and he's the worst guy ever and let's kick him out of office. And it just went nowhere. They were so desperate to make something out of that whole thing that they tried to take Avenatti, the lawyer, and turn him into a guy that could run for president against Donald Trump, like he was some kind of hero for representing Stormy Daniels, which is a big nothing burger case. Where's that guy now? It's like in prison or something. It's just so dumb. But once again, just another point of proof that it's just been narrative after narrative, fake news after fake news. And honestly, lies and corruption and none of this is off the table for liberals. They've said it themselves. Nothing's off the table. We'll do anything. That includes being dishonest. That includes using intelligence agencies and the law, the system of law in our country to try to take down their opponents. And then what did we see? Last year we had the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, which was just another dumb debacle. It devolved into a debacle. They had some really flimsy evidence that was held together, by basically nothing. It was very ethereal. It was just some lady claiming something. It came on the heels of the Me Too movement. So I think that in the liberals' mind, the calculation they were doing is, well, everybody believes all women, and she's a woman, so let's just put her in there, and she'll take down that guy. Dumb. There was no proof. It was plainly proven that there was no proof that this lady had against Kavanaugh. But once again, fake news. More drummed up narrative that was pushed super hard by all the mainstream media and hidden by big tech companies and amplified by big tech companies to cooperate with the big media. And it was all pushed because of a narrative created by the liberal establishment. And that's what we are seeing again. And then finally, there was the impeachment of Donald Trump, based on maybe the most flimsy evidence of any of the stuff. A phone call. That's all they had. They so desperately wanted to attach the word impeachment to Donald Trump's presidency that they went all in on a phone call. It was a going nowhere phone call. It was another nothing burger case. And they turned it into an impeachment. This is all proof leading up to. This is the liberals' MO. This is how Democrats do things. It's all lies, nefarious activity, and then they just use the media machine and the tech oligopolies to try to push whatever narrative they've got on America. And they're doing it again in this election. They saw their window of opportunity earlier this year, and they tried to exploit it. You know, they saw the window of opportunity through the COVID crisis. Oh, we can leverage that to send out a bunch of mail-in ballots. And then regardless of who sends in their mail-in ballots or not, we, as the deep state establishment, can send all those ballots in or collect all those ballots, whether they're sent in or not, and make it look like there was this huge amount of votes that came in. It was all a plot from the beginning. And why was that plot there? That's what we're going to talk about next. So it's a sham election where it's obvious there was extreme amounts of fraudulent activity by the liberals. And this is what I was really getting at with all of that. This is what it really all boils down to. They don't have good ideas, at least ideas that catch on with the greater populace of America right now. They don't have good candidates, particularly candidates to run for president. So they had to cheat to win. And that is what we're talking about now. They knew they didn't have a strong candidate back when they had their Democrat presidential debates. You remember this, they had 24 some odd presidential potentials. They're all running against each other. And the Democrat establishment knew they didn't have one of them that was catching on with the greater populace of the United States. None of these people could sort of generate that populist support. Not even Bernie. Bernie did have a populist support behind him, but it was a minority populist support. It was the fringe. Yes, it had some energy to it, but there's no way that was going to catch on over the whole entire nation, enough to overcome Donald Trump's populist movement. So what did they do? It really did come down to Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. All the other people were complete duds, right? Everybody, their entire bench is just political hacks. None of them had any real heart. They were all just career politicians hoping that maybe they can be the one that everybody likes the best. Maybe they can capture that sort of lightning in a bottle identity politics bull that Obama won on. That's honestly what these people were going for. Buttigieg, he was supposed to be the gay Obama. You just go right down the line. There was the Yang, he was supposed to be the Asian Obama. Elizabeth Warren was supposed to be the American Indian Obama. You just go right down the line. At any rate, staying on point. This is what the liberal establishment did. They did a calculation 9 months, about a year ago or so, and they said, okay, all of our Democrat political candidates for the presidency are weak. We know that. So what are we going to do? We will choose the political hack with the best possible optics. That's what they did. That's why they ended up with Joe Biden. This is simply how simple the math is for them. He looked the most like he could be a presidential guy. He was an old white guy that looked like he could be presidential. And he had an association with their last Democrat politician that had some energy behind him, Barack Obama. That was it. That was the entire calculation. He looks like he could be presidential, and he has some loose association with Barack Obama. By the way, Barack Obama kind of disowned him. Didn't even really want anything to do with him while he was running. What does that say to you? So, they went with the old white guy that had some association with Barack Obama. That was literally the strength of Joe Biden as a candidate. They picked him because of the way that he looks and who he was friends with. It was not on the strength of his policies. So weak, so sad, such an establishment way of making a decision. The Democrat establishment knew he was weak when they picked him. So what else does a desperate establishment political class do, right? I mean, they are the party that says they will do anything to win at all costs. They've said it themselves on multiple occasions. So if you are a political party that has no scruples, that will do anything at any cost to win, then you'll probably stoop to desperation levels that any desperate person would stoop to if you had a crappy candidate and you had even less popular ideas. You start to plan how to rig the election. So they started even before there was a COVID. The COVID was just a convenient way to mail out a block ton of ballots indiscriminately, with no discretion. We're just going to send these out all over the country. And then we'll, do some sort of like things on election night, and then it'll come out that our guy won. And they had a series of other things they were doing at the same time. Because once you go all in and say, we're going to start rigging things, why not do all 10 things? Why stop at one? But they did really, truly underestimate how popular Donald Trump was going to be. If it's true, if Lynn Wood is correct, and Donald Trump should have gotten 70% of the national vote and should have won all 50 states, that means there is a lot of corruption that had to take place to at least flip the states that they flipped. That means that corruption, even in places like New York and California, would have had to take place for Joe Biden to come out a winner. So one way to think about it is the liberals were able to get the mail-in ballot thing passed. And they were able to get that passed because they leveraged COVID in a very cynical way to get that through. And then they had their other sneaky strategies to weaken the electoral process. And each one of these things they were able to install were little wins for them along the way. So another way to think about it is the liberals started winning this election 9 months before the election took place based on dishonest and fraudulent tactics, strategies. This plan they cooked up started many months ago. And even though it seems very harebrained to us conservatives now, like how could they expect to get away with this? In their minds, the calculation was there's not that much risk involved. Now, why do I say that? Why would I say that they don't see the risk involved? It's because this strategy the liberals cooked up was seen by them as a win-win. And I've said this in another video. They knew that from the lack of consequences that they suffered for the last 4 years, that they weren't going to suffer that many consequences from this now. The worst that's going to happen is a few of them will have to go to jail after this. Small price to pay. Still a win-win in their mind. Why? Because if they get away with thoroughly confusing things and sowing enough chaos into this election, then their guy becomes president. That's the big win, right? Well, even if their guy doesn't win, they get the second win, which is they were able to sow enough chaos and confusion into the entire election cycle so that the election map on the night of the election, when they show the blue and the red states, half of them look blue and half of them look red. Oh, look, everybody, we're really split. Donald Trump didn't win in a landslide. Just look at the map, right? Or another way to think about it is this. They took away Donald Trump's ability to give his presidential acceptance speech on election night. See, they took that away from him by coordinating with multiple states to stop counting the votes at a certain moment in the night. That wasn't decided ahead of time. Just all of a sudden, a bunch of states, 6 or so states, just stop counting because Donald Trump is going to win. We can't have that. We got to stop him from being able to give his acceptance speech. This is all about optics. I talked about that in another episode. It's all about the optics. They've got to control the optics. So if they would have lost, which they probably will, at least what they're going to be able to do is they're going to be able to say, well, Donald Trump, he stole it from us, right? And you can even see it in their actions for the last few weeks since the election. It's all, everything, mainstream media, in our tech oligopolies, all the big tech companies in San Francisco, all of them have been working together so that they can blow a huge smokescreen to cover the tricks, to cover the cheating. They just got to get through this as fast as possible so their guy can be elected. And they are all very nervous right now that it is going to be exposed, the deep level of corruption. But this whole phony push by the mainstream media and the Democrat Party to convince everybody that Joe Biden has already won the election, this in essence is a deep fake. I mean, we've heard of fake news for the last 4 years, again and again and again. This right here is a whole nother level of deep fake that we are witnessing right now. Desperately pushing Joe Biden as a president-elect while ignoring what is rapidly becoming the biggest scandal in American election history. The big question is, when all this is over, it is the people that were coordinating this coup, this defrauding of the election. The people that were on the phone, the people that were sending the emails or using WhatsApp or whatever however they were communicating. The people leading up to election night that said we are going to stop counting if Donald Trump is winning. Those are the people that will be held accountable. We don't know how many of those people there are right now. We don't know how well they've covered their tracks yet. But it was a coordinated effort across multiple states, and the people involved will most likely go to prison. They will be the ones. Even after the Democrats lose this presidential election, the sad thing that I'm seeing right now is all this activity that they've done here, they are still going to see it as a win for themselves because they've sown enough confusion and enough chaos into the American election that they don't have to face what's really going on. That their ideas are losing traction, they are losing the culture war, they are losing the grip that they had on the American narrative. And sadly, they will just be trying to, once again, drum up another narrative to hide what really happened. They'll say Donald Trump stole it from us. In this way, they don't have to learn the real lessons. The lessons they should have learned, they should have learned these lessons in 2016. And even more, they should be learning these lessons after 2020. But they're just creating a way for themselves so that they don't have to face the fact that the greater American populace is rejecting their ideas and their candidates now. And they are losing the culture war. Instead, they will just keep creating more clouds of confusion because they'd rather not face their own poor character and dishonesty that led to them committing fraud. They will pretend like the election was stolen from them. Their misplaced self-righteous indignation will lead them to a whole bunch of wrong conclusions. And then they'll repeat those in the entire media for the next 4 years. It'll be Groundhog Day all over again. Here's the good news, though. And this is how us conservatives can stay encouraged. I do honestly think that once the dust settles on this whole thing and we get through these court cases, the litigation, Donald Trump will be reelected as our president for another 4 years. What I'll leave us with is this. As conservatives, I think it's important for us to take this time right now to recenter, to refocus on what is great about our country. Because whether Donald Trump is our president or whether they are able to use all these nefarious, fraudulent tactics to make Joe Biden the next president, it's not going to change the work that we have to do. We need to stay focused on what is great about America, what is great about our republic. So what I want to do here, I want to just read to you something that, to quote from a video I did last week. Actually, this is a quote from, I think it's called The Great Courses. It's the American Founding Fathers. You can check it out right now on Amazon Prime if you have that. But here's the quote from that course. Republics are held together by the virtue, public spiritedness, and self-denial of the people. And right now as conservatives, what we can do is we can focus on this. How do we live our lives with virtue? How do we have a public spiritedness? And how do we practice self-denial as Americans? Thinking about the way that our life touches other people. Thinking about how the actions and the thoughts that we hold impact the world around us and impact our country. So if the liberals aren't going to do it, if they're just going to be self-centered and focus only on what they want and they'll just throw the country away as long as they win, we can't be like them. We have to rise above that. This quote goes on to say from this course, sovereignty, after all, rests in a republic with the people rather than with kings and nobles. And that is what America is built on. Our sovereignty rests in the republic with the people, not with some kind of nobility or a king. And if the people prove to be corrupt, selfish, and indolent, they will bring the roof of the republic down on their heads faster than any hostile emperor ever could. That's why it is so important, more important now than ever, that conservatives continue to gather, continue to hold rallies, regardless of who is president, and continue to encourage each other to have this attitude that maintains a healthy and strong republic. All right, you guys, this has been another episode of Americana X Newswatch. I've been Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Thanks for joining me for this show. Tune in next time when we'll be covering some other great, encouraging subjects to encourage a greater America. Right now, let me know what you think. Do you agree with my thoughts, my assessments, my analysis? Let me know in the comments section below, and we will see you on the next episode of Newswatch.